So my name is Tiago, and we are going to get started to be certified in Azure. Are you guys ready? So let's go. So I work as an independent contractor, which is a fancy name to say that I'm a freelancer without the free in the world. And I'm basically a cloud architect and advisor for several companies. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, and I also teach Azure in a classroom for some companies, mainly in Europe. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about is a little bit about the certifications, an overview about the certifications. We are going to talk about the exam, talk about the object domain of the exam, and then we're going to review and check how can you guys prep and what are the most hot topics that you should be careful when you should study for the exam. And of course, some of the action takes in the end that we're going to have. So let's start with the certification overview. This is the tracks that we have for the Azure Applications and Infrastructure certifications. So as you can see on the left, we start with fundamentals, which is a certification that is targeted at people that are non-IT, but they still need to have some knowledge on Azure, and also people that are starting their journey in Azure and they really want to start from like the beginning of it. Then we have another level that we call the associate level. On the associate level, we have three roles that we have over there. First of all, it is the Azure administrator, then we have Azure developers, and also the security engineer. As you can understand, basically one is for people that work and do and create virtual machines, scale sets, and do all the administration stuff on Azure. The other one is targeted at enterprise developers that want to take advantage of all the cool services that we have today in Azure. So that will be for the Azure developer certification. The last one, it's a very cool certification in my opinion. It was the last one that I got, which is the security engineers, specialized in security, a very hot topic today in enterprises, and when it comes to cloud, even more is a big concern from the enterprises. We also have the Azure DevOps on the expert level, and also our Azure Solutions Architect. That's what we're going to focus here today. And then also, in Ignite, we are announcing that also there is another certification level that we call the specialties. And we start to have one now, which is for Azure for SAP workloads. So if you work with SAP and you need to implement SAP in your organizations using Azure, so that's a very, very hot certification for professionals that will have that target in their hands. So, but let's start to talk a little bit about the Azure Solutions Architect. What is our audience for this? Usually when we talk about this, we talk about solution architects that they really need to talk with stakeholders, understand what stakeholders in companies, what they want, and also, try to understand and try to translate all those business requirements into things and documentation that Azure administrators and Azure developers, they can understand and they will implement those things. Of course, candidates for this exam, they should already be some kind of proficient in Azure, because this is not an easy certification to get, and that's why it's so valuable in the marketplace. Because we should already have some knowledge in Azure Administrator or Azure Development, because we touch in both worlds. Also DevOps, if you have also some knowledge on the DevOps industry, that's also good for this. Yes? Okay. So the path that we have. So this is the only certification that we have 2 exams to get to the certification. So we have the AZ-300, which is the exam prep session that I bring here today. And we also have the AZ-301. So that means that you have to pass in both exams. Okay? You cannot choose one. Eh? You don't need to choose. You just need to take both and pass on both. There is no specific order in taking one or the other. You can take whatever you want first. Of course, there is a recommendation to take the AZ-300 first, because it's a technology exam, so it's really hands-on. Let's do stuff with Azure, okay? It's really hands-on. When we talk about the 301 exam, well, the 301 exam is not so much hands-on, it's more on the design level. So it's a little bit more abstract in terms of the technology, so you really need to have some experience, okay, already with the services. And I feel that when you're prepping for the AZ-300, you also get, okay, that kind of experience. So when you go for the 301, you're more comfortable with the technology. We start always to talk about what's an exam. Just a small poll. Who already took exams here? Microsoft exams? Okay, so I would say like 50-50, probably less than 50. So for the ones that didn't took, so we have, in these kinds of exams, we should have, and we should expect 40 to 60 questions. You have 3 hours to take the exam, which is 2 hours and a half for doing really questions on the exam, 30 minutes that is divided in the beginning and in the last part, which is in the beginning, instructions for the exam, okay? I really like that everyone read the instructions for the exam. We get some complaints that, I didn't know that that was like that. It's in the instructions, okay? Believe me. Microsoft is doing exams for many, many years. The instructions are really clear. We just need to read them, okay? And then in the end, we have some time that we can comment on some of the questions that we did. And we always like to ask, hey, if you guys don't feel that one of the questions was good enough, or if one of the questions is wrong, with Azure changing so much, that might happen. Microsoft tries also not that to happen, but it might happen. Comment on that. There are people in Microsoft that they read the comments that you do, that I do when I take the exams too. So we have 30 minutes for that part. All the questions that we have to do. If you do a question and you get it wrong, you don't get last points, or there's no deducted points on questions. So I always tell my students, and I'm telling you also, answer every damn question, okay? All of them. Even if you don't know the answer, you try to do an evaluated guess, okay? And you try to do your best to try to get the question. Also, there are some questions in the exam that they cannot be skipped. So this means that you're answering the question, and then you say next question, and then you cannot go back to that question. Again, this is very well explained in the instructions. You just have to read the instructions. Some people don't read the instructions because they are nervous taking the exam, which is fair, okay, totally fair. But that is really well explained there. So some questions that you cannot go back, okay? And others that you can go back, you can always mark for review. So if you don't know the answer, you're saying, I feel that this is the answer, but I want to review this in the end of this section, you can always do that. There is more than just multiple choice questions. Got it? So this is not an exam that's just multiple choice questions and you select and that's it. So there are different types of questions. There are going to be build lists. There are going to be odd areas. There are going to be, like, for example, pieces of code, PowerShell, Bash, C# code, whatever, depends on the exam, of course, with incomplete parts, and you have to click and you have to complete them. You're not going to write code. That's not the idea over there, but you have to complete them, okay? So all of that will be there. And also, we also have, and that was announced last year in Ignite, performance-based labs. And performance-based labs, they're coming for all the role-based certification exams. And that's really when you have Azure in one window and you're going to have tasks to do. I have a slide on that. And also case studies, the famous case studies, yes, I know, okay? So we have sometimes a case study, we have some business requirements, you're going to have some technical requirements, and usually it is a lot of text to read, but the answers will be on that text. So you just need to go to questions, and with your knowledge that you have studied for the exam and the context that you get from the business requirements, the technical requirements, you're able to answer those questions. The performance-based labs will have a UI like that. So on the left, you're going to have the Azure portal. On the right, you're going to have tasks. And you can expect 7 to 9 tasks per lab. And as you can see over there, just basically expand one of the tasks, and what happens is that they are going to ask you to do something, okay? You have to do that in the Azure portal. You can do it through the Azure portal. You can fire up the Cloud Shell if you're good in Bash and just type some Bash commands. If you prefer PowerShell, you can do it in PowerShell. What happens is you have to do exactly what they are asking in the task. How do you get there? It doesn't matter. Got it? And then there is something in the back that will check if you really did exactly that. It's pretty cool, no? Huh? You guys like that? I love labs, to be honest, okay? So let's talk about an exam overview and objective domain that we have. So this is the objective domain that we have for the AZ-300. So what we have is deploying and configuring infrastructure, and then we have like a percentage there. That percentage basically means that 25 to 30% of the topics on that exam will be about deployment and configuring infrastructure. Then we also have the same thing for implementing workloads and security, 20 to 25, create and deploy apps, 5 to 10%, implementing authentication and secure data, and then develop for the cloud and Azure storage, 20 to 25%. And this is where I want to get. There is code on this exam. There are developer topics, and there are IT pro topics on this, okay? So it's a mix on administration and development. That doesn't mean that you have to be like an expert in both, but at least in one of them is recommended that you can excel in one of the fields so that you can take the exam and pass, okay? So deploying and configuring infrastructure then, as you can see, divides, and you have like some subtopics over there. All this information I have in the end of the slides. We have a page on Microsoft, on docs.microsoft.com, where basically it is everything there. There's a PDF document that you can download that comes with every small dark detail of everything that you need to study and you need to know for passing on the exam, okay? But in terms of subcategories, what we have is we analyze resource utilization and consumption, storage accounts, virtual machines, a lot of stuff about virtual machines, Azure AD, networking, and also hybrid identities, okay? So let's just start with talking about analyzing resources and utilization and consumption. Basically, we talk about Azure Alerts, and we talk about the common experience of Azure Alerts. So this is something that you need to understand. You need to know how to create Azure Alerts. You need to know that signals are based, okay, on the resource type where you're creating your alerts. Then you can create and manage those action groups, okay? And then also you can define action types, and action types could be just send an email, okay, a push notification for your app that you have on your phone, for the Azure administration app, okay? A webhook, call an Azure function, call a logic app, you name it, okay? So all of this can be and will be, okay, in the exam. When it comes to Microsoft storage, so Azure storage accounts, so important topics about Azure storage accounts. First of all, understand all the differences between V1, V2, and blob storage, okay? So understand that, for example, in V1 and V2, we have all the services, okay? We call it containers, which is the old blobs, okay? I don't know if you noticed, but they changed this a couple of weeks ago. They're not called blobs on the Azure portal anymore. They call it containers, which is kind of makes sense, okay? Then we have file shares, tables, and queues. In general purpose V2, we have the same services, but in blob storage, we don't have the other ones. We only have blobs, so containers. And blob storage bring us something that is, in my opinion, pretty cool, and I implement this in my customers really a lot, which is basically tiering, access tiering. So I can have hot storage, cool storage, and archive storage. Also, kind of important to understand that cool storage, you do a 30-day commitment. Archive, you do a 180-day commitment if your files don't stay there for that time. Okay, when you move them to another tier, you're still going to pay those 30 days that you commit with it. Also important is to understand that I can create this through what? Through the portal. But this here, I just bring this for the Azure storage accounts, okay? But what I'm going to explain is for all the services that I'm going to explain, you always need to understand how to create stuff in the portal, and you also need to know what? PowerShell, And you also need to know bash. So in terms of PowerShell, you need to understand that first I need to create what? A resource group. So I'm calling the new AZ resource group commandlet, and then I need to pass a name and a location, okay? Basically, then I can create an Azure storage account with a new -AZ storage account. I pass a resource group, name, location, a SKU name, and a kind. So we have to understand this. For bash, same thing, okay? AZ group create, we pass a name, we pass a location, and then we can create an Azure storage account, basically same arguments that you see over there, name, resource group, the location, the SKU, and then the kind. Sometimes you have differences in the arguments here that you see there, like for example, SKU, correct? And if I go back, there is SKU name. So you have to understand that one is SKU, the other is SKU name, because that's very easy to confuse. So if it's very easy to confuse, that gives me a good question to make. Okay, so be careful with those kinds of things. Got it? So there you go. Then also redundancy option for Azure storage. So I can understand what is local redundant storage, that I have what? 3 local symmetric copies. So basically all the copies are the same, and I have 3 in the same what? Same Azure region data center. Okay? Then I can have zone redundant storage only available where I have availability zones on Azure. So it's still a little bit a limited service, because not all the Azure regions have availability zones. And I only have those in those. And also zone redundant storage is only available in V2, okay, storage accounts, because V1 storage accounts, they don't have availability zones ZRS. Then understand that, yeah, and then it's 3 copies, by the way, and it's 1 in each, okay, zone that I have in my availability zones. Understanding GRS, geo redundant storage, I have 6 total copies, 3 in the main region, and then we always have 3 others that is symmetrically copied to the pair region of the main region where you decided to put your stuff. Then we have the read access GRS, which is exactly the same, but I have what? An endpoint that, like the same name says, I can read from the pair region. I can go there and I can read. Understand that now, because Microsoft is always putting new questions on the exam, okay? That there are 2 others that are still under preview, okay? But probably when they get to GA, okay, they basically might get also on the exam. So if you don't take the exam this week, probably it's better also to understand a little bit those. They are called geo-redundant storage and basically zone redundant storage, and then the read access geo-zone redundant storage. Okay, they are pretty new in Azure. Talking about virtual machines, always important, and things that I need to consider when I'm going to create a virtual machine, which is something that I love, because most of my customers in the beginning, they just, oh yeah, we need a VM, and just go to the portal and just start to create a VM, right? Like, come on, just hold on, okay? I know that you're excited to create virtual machines, but first let's see what will be a good naming structure for my virtual machines. Location. There are a lot of things that might, okay, make my decision to put one virtual machine in one, okay, region and not on another region. For example, if I have a very awesome latency with region A here, but then I have a legal requirement that say, hey, you cannot use region A. Yeah, I need to put in another region. Let's just call it region B. This is the kind of questions that you should expect for an Azure Architect exam, for example, on a case study. Things like this. Got it? So you have to understand this kind of stuff. Then, of course, sizes of the virtual machines. Look, you don't need to know all the 200 or 300 size. I already lost the number. I don't know how many they have anymore. Okay, but let's just say that they have like 200 and a lot 300. You don't need to know them, all of them by heart, okay? Don't worry about that. But it's nice to know that, well, we have some that are GPU-based, others are compute optimized, and then I still understand the families, okay? Which families are in which category, correct? But then you don't need to know, okay, all the dark details that you have in each one of them. Operating systems of the support of the machines, and then we can understand that Windows, for example, we cannot do in-place upgrades, okay? You have to create another one with a new, more modern operating system, and then you can move your workloads there. But for Linux machines, you can do that. So things like this we need to understand too. Configuration of the VMs after it starts, so I can call extensions in Azure, and I can have like PowerShell VSC. I have my script extensions that I can put some PowerShell, and I can just call that. And of course, related resources that the VM will need. Understand that I can attach data disks to the virtual machines, that I can put also more than one NIC to my virtual machines, but I have limits on this. And limits are basically based on the size of your virtual machine. Okay, understand a little bit that, because if you have a scenario where you need 3 NICs, you might need to go to a bigger VM, even if you don't need that, so that you can put the NICs over there, okay? Then automate this. Understand how it runs in PowerShell, how it does in Bash, so Azure CLI. Also with ARM templates, and we're going to see ARM templates are a really big thing on the exam. And also through the Azure portal that I can do also this, and I can do all of them too, through the marketplace images, or I can have my own images too over there. And also through code. There are SDKs with Fluent API for C#, Java, and Python that we can also create virtual machines with that technology. Talking about automate the deployments of virtual machines. So basically, there you go. I'm just doing here in the Azure portal. I start to type template deployment. I basically get the template deployment UI, and I can basically edit this. And as you can see, I can basically add a resource through the portal, and I can choose there a Windows virtual machine. And then basically, I can also even select too from the GitHub repos that we have from the Quick Start template repo. If you don't know, you should know that. It's a really awesome repo where we have hundreds of ARM templates to create Azure resources. So it can be a good starting point even for your consulting parts that you need to do. And then basically this will load, okay, the ARM template. Talking about the ARM template, so what do we need to know about ARM templates? We need to understand that they have a structure, schema, they have the content version, we have parameters, okay, and then we can have variables based on those parameters, and then we have resources, and resources where I'm really going to create my part of the resources that I want to create, okay? I give an advice to everyone, just review some of the ARM templates that you get on the Quick Start template GitHub repo. Just have a look at the best ones, like to create storage accounts, virtual machines. There are a bunch of them for VMs there, for SQL databases too, so all of them, so that you're comfortable with ARM templates, and start to create your own ARM template so that you're comfortable with this. Talking about high availability, also super important, the high availability part. So you need to understand that a single VM, we can have 99.9 in SLA, but all the disks, there's a catch here, that all the disks needs to be what? Premium storage. I cannot have like 10 disks premium storage and then a standard data disk there. You lose the SLA, okay? Then also availability sets. I can create an availability set. I can go up to 3-fold domains depending on the Azure region where I'm creating this, and also up to 20 update domains. And if I have 2 instances in here, I get 99.95% of an SLA. Again, this is the kind of questions that I expect an Azure architect to know by heart. Is that if I give you a case study that I need a 99.99% of an SLA, hey, look, there's only one answer. You need to go to what? You need to go, if you're talking about infrastructure, you need to go to availability zones. So you need to select a region where you support availability zones, and you have 3 zones per region, and each zone has independent power, cooling, and network. Got it? So it's really a big thing. And of course, because of this, you get 99.99% of an SLA, of uptime SLA. And also you have also low latency across zones. So what is in the Azure documentation is that you get less than 2 milliseconds of latency between regions. Okay? I have customers that they have more than that in their data centers, okay? Deploy and configuring VM scale set. So understand what a scale set is. So I can create this, and I start with 2 virtual machines that size. Then I will put some workload in here. And then I can put what? Scaling configurations on this. I can just say, hey, I want just, for example, X number of instances, or I can enable auto-scaling configurations. And if you enable auto-scaling configurations on this, basically you can put some rules there. Well, if, for example, I have more than 75% of CPU, I get a new instance. If I have less than X, okay, for example, I will have a less one instance, so that you can go up when you have the demand, but also you get down when you don't have that demand. So something like this. You can also limit, as you can see over there, instance limits in the middle of the picture, minimum, maximum, and a default number of instances. So you can say there, I can go up to 10 and no more than 10, and I always need 2 at least. Okay, I don't go less than 2 instances. So we can do this, and it's pretty cool what we can do with scale sets. I don't know if you already use scale sets or not, but this is like really, really cool for some legacy systems that you still need infrastructure as a service to run this with scale sets. Implementing solutions that use virtual machines. So also our topic is about configuring Azure Disk Encryption for virtual machines with the help of the Key Vault, Azure Key Vault. So basically, I need to understand that I need an access policy, like you see over there. So basically, that will enable, okay, the encryption of your disks. And also, again, so talking about topics here will be also networking, group policies, and tiers. Don't forget tiers of virtual machines. This is like super important on the exam to understand the families of the virtual machines, okay? Then we talk about what? We talk about creating connectivity between VNETs. So, which of course we need to know a little bit about virtual networks, but then the hot topic will be like creating this. And we have 2 big options to connect to virtual networks. The first is to create a VNet to VNet, which is what you see in the picture. And basically the other one will be what? Will be VNet peering. So understand a little bit that the billing method of peering is just based on traffic, but you pay every time, everywhere, even in the same region, peering is paid, okay? And you pay the 2 ways, you pay inbound and outbound, but you just pay the traffic and that's it. And it's super easy to set up and you trust on the Azure backbone. VNets to VNets is fully encrypted. And what happens is that you need, and you can see over there, that VPN gateway in one side, you need a VPN gateway on the other side. Okay, so, and also that those 2 devices that you need, well, those 2 appliances that you need to create over there, they're going to be paid. Plus, if you're doing this across regions, you also need to pay, of course, the traffic. But it's not that hard to implement. But of course, yeah, VNet peering is like something that we do like in 30 seconds. We have VNet peering implementing between 2 VNets. It's really, really easy to set up. Talking about networking, so public IP addresses, private IP addresses, understanding the differences, understanding that an IP is a separated Azure resource, so it's not something that you put on a VM, an IP, and it's just on that VM. You can then detach it from a NIC, and then you can just attach it to another place. So things like this that we need to understand. Public IP addresses, I can attach to virtual machines, I can attach to instance load balancers, VPNs, or application gateways too. I can also have a DNS hostname resolution, as you can see on the picture over there. I can just try to find a free, okay, hostname, something that is available, and you can create also that. So you can live with host names instead of living with the IP address itself. Also, private IP addresses. They are located to the subnet range where you put them. Again, you can also have dynamic, you can have static, knowing the differences on this. Okay, so this will be also something that there's a lot of questions about this. Again, also how to create IP addresses and public, private, using what? Bash, PowerShell. So understanding those 2 parts, okay, also something that is important. When it comes to Azure AD, we have understanding that we have a flat structure, understanding the licensing model. So we have the free ones, and then with the free license model, and then we have the premium, the P1 and the P2. Try to understand what comes in the P1 and P2. Okay, like multi-factor authentication, I only need P1. If I'm using PIM, for example, I already need to have P2 accounts. Just the main features that you have on this. Because again, this is the kind of questions that you can get on a case study or even in a straight question, okay? Understanding also password management. So when I configure hybrid identities, understand that I can configure pass-through, okay? I can basically configure the password hash synchronization, understanding all those models, and also the other model, which is using ADFS, so that all the authentications happen on-prem, okay, using the old ADFS model. We need to understand a little bit the differences in here so that we can answer on the questions. And also, very cool feature, that is self-service password reset for Azure Active Directory. So also understand that we need and we can implement this. If we implement this, of course, we don't need that and we can save some money because we don't need to run this on-prem anymore. If we use something that will synchronize also the password, we'll do the write back of the password again to on-prem. And you can rely only on the self-service password reset method on Azure. You don't need to create something for your users on-prem. So hybrid identities, all this, we can also do this with Azure AD Connect, understand what Azure AD Connect is, do some the password sync and the password write back, understand that write back, you need what? It's just a checkbox that you put on Azure AD Connect, right? But there is a catch that we need to have a premium account to make that happen. Okay, so all of this that we need to understand for Azure AD Connect. Then we have another topic, which is implementing workloads and security. So we need to talk a little bit about migrate servers to Azure, serverless computing, load balancing, role-based access control, and multi-factor authentication. Those are the hot topics that we have in here. So migrate servers to Azure. Understand that companies today, they really don't want to focus on having those super expensive refresh cycles in the data center, that they have sometimes to basically refresh 50, 60% of the hardware of the data center in just that single year. It's a lot of money. They need to do a capital expenditure. I don't want this. So understand that that will basically, with Azure, we can try to go around a little bit this because we start to have an operational expense instead of a capital expense. And of course, understand all that, enable disaster recovery scenarios is also nice when we come for this part, so that we have some stuff on-prem and we can do with Azure, okay, we can use this for disaster recovery scenarios. And there you go. Okay, migration phases. So not all the companies, they can migrate straight away, okay, for the best design architecture that we can have in Azure on those applications. So usually we have several phases. The first phase will just discover. Let me discover what you have. Let me discover your applications, how they work, okay? What are the dependencies between servers that you have and virtual machines that you have? And for this, usually we use a service that is called Azure Migrate, okay? And with Azure Migrate, we can do that phase. When it comes to phase 2, we talk about, let's do the migration itself. And over there, we have two options, okay? We can use ASR, so Azure Site Recovery, to do that, or right now we can also use Azure Migrate to achieve those migrations. It's also a new feature that we have on Azure Migrate, okay? Also, then we can optimize, fine-tune our Azure-based workloads so that we can basically get a good return on the investment from our customers, and this is very easy to do because usually companies, they have those very, very large machines to keep up with peaks on the demand. When we move to Azure, this is one of the things that, hey, we don't need that super very large machine. We can live with a smaller one because like 95% of the time, that machine will be enough. For the other 5%, you can have what? If you have predictable demand, so you can just scale more instances for that machine, for that scale set, for example, or if you don't have predictable loads, well, you can also use auto-scaling to achieve that. VMs are cool, but this is, for me, it's the coolest feature that I can have today in Azure. It's like serverless. Because with serverless, it's not that we're not going to have servers. Of course, we always have servers in the back, but I get abstracted okay, from the servers that I have. So I don't have any infrastructure to manage. I don't have to have any scalability rules. And of course, with this, I have a fast time to market. So I can build my apps. I can just put it to run in serverless. What do I have to respond to serverless? I can build logic apps. I can use logic apps in a very design way, very no-code, almost no-code experience. In a visual workflow management that I can have connectors to more than 200 software as a service applications. And you just need to connect them, configuring, and then you can create those kinds of workflows that you see over there. Also, Azure Functions. And Azure Functions started to be a developer thing, but today, even we can run now this with PowerShell even there, and Bash and things like that. This is the new experience, okay, that we have for customers to run, for example, like Azure automation stuff. Why not running on Azure Functions? That's also an opportunity for us to do this, and it's very easily. I can have an alert, calls a function, and the function you pay for what you use. There is nothing in the back. You don't have to say, oh, this is this instance, okay, this size, and I have 2 of them, and I need to configure scaling. No, you can run in serverless mode. That basically you're trusting all that Microsoft Azure and the capabilities that Azure have to scale this on you, and you don't have to worry. And of course, you're going to pay for exactly what you use and not for the capacity that you had reserved. And also event grids, that is very easy to build event-driven applications and things that happen on Azure. Okay, then I can call a function, I can call a logic app, I can just put a message on a service bus message, on a storage message. So all of this, also some questions about event grid. Then talking about load balancing. So when it comes to load balancer, we need to understand that we have Azure Load Balancer, layer 4, basic and standard tiers. Talk about the limits, okay? So 100 machines for basic, 1,000 for standard. Basic is free, standard is paid. And I can have features like port forwarding, and I can have public or private load balancers depending if the IP that I attach there on the front is if it's a private or a public IP address. That's what makes a public load balancer or a private load balancer. Also, the Azure Application Gateway, understand it's a layer 7 a load balancer, and I can also do stuff like SSL TLS termination with this. I can have WAF rules on it. I can do URL-based routing, okay, all of that cool stuff. And of course, understand that I have a bunch of third-party load balancers in the marketplace of other companies that they probably have. You already have some of them in your own data center, and probably you want to keep up using those devices in Azure, okay? And like most brands are there, and they have appliances on Azure that if you don't want to use those two, one of those two, you can also use those third-party load balancers. Integrating on-premises networks with VNET. So I can have site-to-site VPN connections, understand I need to have a device on-prem, I need to have a gateway in your VNET, and with all the, licensing and money that you need to spend to have all that, and understand that I can establish basically a site-to-site VPN connection with on-prem. And so really start to use this as an old network, and a very, very big old network, and part is in Azure, and another part will be, okay, it will be in your on-prem site. Understand that I can also have basically a point-to-site VPN connection. This is great if you have like developers or administrators that are working remotely, and you want them to bring them inside Azure, so there's no need for appliances. You rely on a software, on a VPN software, and you can establish a connection also to your VNet. Then also talk about ExpressRoute. They don't do that much questions on ExpressRoute, but just understand a little bit that, yeah, I can have basically a dedicated connection to my partner Edge, and then my partner will have a very good relation with Azure, with the Microsoft Edge that is redundant, okay? And then I can have basically connections up to 10 gigabits with this. And this is a more reliable connection than just go through the internet in a site-to-site VPN connection. Understanding RBAC, so role-based access control. and understanding that not everyone in your company that deals with Azure needs to be a global admin. Got it? Yeah. I would like that my customers will be in this room. I don't feel that they are all of them. Okay, but yeah. Understanding that I can use role-based access control to just give the right permissions to the right people. Also understand that I can use this through the Azure portal, PowerShell, CLI, and also through ARM templates. And then, if the roles that Microsoft provides you, they are not enough, you can do built-in roles, okay? Again, this is a JSON file that you have to create, and you can do this. And you can do exactly the permissions that that external consultant, like me when I'm going to companies, I will get instead of being global admin. Okay? Correct. So it doesn't make any sense that. Also talking about MFA, multi-factor authentication. Configuring user accounts for MFA, conditional access policy, that's like a freaking hot topic there. Okay, like, so be careful with that. Understanding that, yeah, you need a premium account to do that. By the way, if you're studying for the exam, you can also do a trial of a P2 account. You have 30 days, I think. And for 30 days, you have 25 licenses or 100 licenses as a P2, so you can always try, and you can try these cool features. So conditional access policies, I can do stuff like, when I go to a specific application, okay, I can basically say that, well, when you go here, okay, I will give you access, but you have to provide multi-factor authentication. So I have to provide a second factor so that I can give you access to this. Like, for example, when you access where? The Azure portal, correct? So that's always the best practice to have. Creating web apps, so here we talk about the app service, and when you talk about web jobs, I have continuous web jobs, I have triggered web jobs, understanding the differences, understanding that I only have two models, which is continuous and trigger, I don't have more. Understanding that I support files like command, executables, PowerShell, bash files, PHP, etc. And I can also run, if you say that you want this to be triggered, then you can do triggers based on a schedule, and those schedule will be those cron expressions. And I will ask everyone here to review cron expressions for the exam. Then understand that I have a bunch of tiers, free, share it, etc. What I really want you guys to understand is that the first two that you have over there, they run on shared hardware. All the other ones is dedicated hardware. So you have to choose, I want a machine this size, and I want X number of instances of that machine, etc. And understanding the main differences between in terms of feature-wise. Like, for example, I can have custom domains starting on the shared, but only the basic allows me to have SSL TLS certificate for that custom domain. Okay, so check out those features and those differences in the features on the app service tiers. When it runs containers, understand also, for example, the Azure Container Registry. Understanding that I also have 3 SKUs, the basic, the standard, and the premium. And for example, understanding again the differences. The premium, one of the cool features that it gives me Azure Application. So I can just say, hey, I also want that ACR over there, over there, over there, over there. And it does all the synchronization of the image containers that I put over there. And again, also very important, okay, understand the bash part of this, and also understand a little bit of Docker, because those are the things that you're going to do, like a Docker pull, a Docker push, so that you can push some images for your registry. Okay, so you need to understand that too. Then implementing authentication. This is easy. It's just understanding OpenID and OAuth, understanding the registration process for your applications. No more than that. Then the last bit, understanding Cosmos DB. This is like also a very hot topic, as the product is very hot there. Understanding that I have a global distribution, I have elasticity, scalability, okay, and also understanding the consistent models that I have on this, and understanding a little bit the differences between all of them. Then about SQL. So about SQL, I have 3 big opportunities with SQL. SQL databases, managed instances and SQL Server running on a virtual machine. Understanding the differences between all of them. And SQL databases and managed instances, they are managed services. So backups, patching, recovery, all done by the service. When you go to virtual machines, well, you have to do it yourself. Understanding also the limits on the sizes of the databases, okay? You have the limits over there. Understanding that the parity that you have between this and a full product, they make questions like this. They can do questions like this. Understanding that the other two are compatible, okay? But if you really, really need full compatible with SQL Server version X, like, I don't know, like 20, I don't know, like 14, something like that, 2016, that needs to be that. Needs to be running on side a virtual machine, okay? Also understanding that when I buy SQL databases, I have two billing models, DTUs and I have vCores. And understanding that if I go, for example, for the DTU, I can also create elastic pools. I can create a big elastic pool, a eDTU pool, and then I can put several databases over there, and basically I can run all the databases running inside the same eDTU basically component, and of course they will share the resources. Last bit, understanding the differences between the messaging services, Event Grid, Event Hub, and Service Bus. So Event Grid is reactive programming, is to react a status change, something that changes in your Azure subscription, etc. Event Hubs is very used in IoT. Okay, so if you have telemetry, data streaming, because this will have basically be an event streaming service. And then Service Bus, traditional messaging service. You get a message, you put there, done, okay? And then you can consume the messages, that's it. Auto-scaling, we already talked about auto-scaling, but understand that the cloud offers the scalability, okay, to use the unlimited power that we have with Azure. And understanding that if I have apps that have like those patterns that you see over there, like, of course, makes all the sense, okay, to use auto-scaling on those applications. So you have to go for a service that can handle that. And we have Azure auto-scaling as a common approach for several services. So the features and the way that I configure will be the same across different services. So this is basically a good overview about what it's on the topic, where you need to focus. How do you prep? So we have also, for example, the Microsoft Learn, where you can get a very cool experience there. You have a lot of resources on Learn. I'm a huge fan of Microsoft Learn, so check it out. They have paths for exams and things like that, so, and they are always being updated. You can also go to events, okay, training events that Microsoft does. So that's also a very nice opportunity. Or you can go to the classroom. So there are several training companies. I'm sure that all of you here know your local training companies, and you can go and you have instructor-led training done by Microsoft certified trainers, and they will help you in achieving the certification. So this is basically the link that you have with all the stuff for the exam. So docs.microsoft.com, learn, certifications, exams, and then AZ-300. Then you have a PDF there that you can download that has all the things that you have there, okay? And then some tips and tricks that I've saved for the last. Analyze the exam objectives. And then, based on Learn, instructor-led training, some video-based learning training, etc., choose your learning materials. Set small goals, like this week I'm going to learn this, tomorrow I'm going to learn this, tomorrow I'm going to study that, okay? Do your learning experience, what you want to do every day. Then practice. And then schedule the exam for a further date, but schedule it right away so that you have a target. Okay, this is the date I'm going to do the exam, so until there, I have to know my stuff. Got it? Because if you don't schedule the exam, you're always postponing your study, etc., and you're going to take forever to take the exam. But if you schedule it right away, okay, I have to do it. That's the day, okay? And of course, relax in the exam. Okay, there is no problem if you fail on the exam. You can always take it again. Okay, that's usually what I say to everyone. It's not the end of the world. Everyone fails on exams, okay? I don't have any hard time saying, I already failed on Microsoft exams. Yeah, I did. Okay, it happens. It happens to everyone, okay? You didn't prep, you're nervous on that day, etc. Manage your time when you take the exams. Be careful with the labs. The labs can take some time to take. Okay? And of course, I don't know if you already know, but you have a free certification exam just for attending Ignite. How cool is that? Huh? So you can go to that link, okay? You can basically register for your free exam, okay? So that's it, okay? By the way, this is some other sessions, some other exam preps. Okay, I can go to the slide. Okay. Okay, this was the best slide. Okay, got it. Did everyone got it? Yeah? It's AKS free exam _ Microsoft. Okay. But basically, then I will move, okay, to the other slide where we can have a list of other exam prep sessions. And if you have questions, I will be here, okay? Thank you very much.